Welcome to another broadcast of Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio on the Artist First Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. And now your host, a great musician who has had at least one gig with extraterrestrials. It's Mr. Kevin Estrella.
Good evening and welcome to Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio. It is now March of 2019. And we are moving into the spring equinox, and there's a whole bunch of things that are going on. I'm actually going to be down in Sedona, Arizona next weekend for a 5D meditation called Beyond the Matrix with Shakina Rose and Susan Ross. They were on our show last month, and they invited me to a wonderful gathering that we're having in the beautiful area of Sedona, a very holy area and full of a lot of extraterrestrial activity. And tonight we have return of Sue and White Otter and Sandia Wisdom E.T., the Zetas Aponte from New Mexico, who reside in the base that's under the Sandia Mountains in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who I'm very close with. I work very closely with Sue and Otter, and it's probably one of the most incredible CE5 contact stories of our time. And Sue and Otter are returning, and tonight we're actually going to be talking. Our topic tonight is going to be one that's been probably on most of your minds, since you're listening to this show, is the question that you've always been asking yourself is, how can I have contact? How can I have contact with extraterrestrials? Well, we're going to tell you how to do that tonight. We're going to give you the keys to the Ferrari, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about telepathy, and we're going to be talking about how to contact them and how to develop your telepathy. But before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio on Artist First. You know, we want to thank you so much for your continued patronage. You know, you the listeners are the ones you tune in every episode. You guys are the truth seekers. You know, you guys are disclosure. I'm not disclosure. You guys are disclosure. You know, and you can become a member and enjoy exclusive benefits on. I have a patronage account on my archive page, and you know you can get unreleased music by Pyramids of Mars, including my new re-release of my music in 432 hertz. So join Pyramids of Mars patron, keep us on the air, help us to raise consciousness about our star families. You know, even $1 or $2 a month goes a long way, and you can enjoy lots of exclusive benefits. But without further ado, I would like to welcome my wonderful friends Sue and White Otter. Welcome to Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio. How are you doing?
Well, good evening from New Mexico.
We're here. We're doing okay. It's been a long week, and we're glad to be talking to you and relaxing and spending some time talking about our favorite friends and how you and all of your listeners can develop your skill set and have contact yourselves.
Yes. And just so people understand, you know, to understand Sue and Otter, they have had extraterrestrial contact with particular star nations now for about 5 years, and it all kind of happened by accident. Maybe you can give like a 5-minute synopsis so we can get our listeners up to speed for those who are new to the show, and tell them about you know, your experiences and who we're talking about.
Go ahead, Otter.
Go ahead, Otter. Listen to this. Well, back in 2013, after I had gotten to know Sue Walker a little bit in Iowa from frequenting a sacred Lakota ceremony in the Iowa area, I had invited her to New Mexico to see my home and spend some time here and get more acquainted. Well, after she'd been here about 4 or 5 days, she began experiencing some telepathic communication that she was not familiar with. And it took her about 3 or 4 contacts with this individual before she finally mentioned something to me about it. And of course, I was aware that there were some voices coming from the mountain, because they had started pinging me, you would say, in our telepathic terminology, within a matter of a couple of months of me moving into this residence. And Sue, and she says, do you know of any entities living in the mountain or under the mountain or something like that? And I says, oh, them. I've been kind of tuning them out somewhat, because they didn't follow the typical patterns of communications that I have had for the last almost 40 years. Spirits and extraterrestrial entities in my lifetime. But anyway, subsequently, she began communicating with a gentleman under the mountain who she was calling the voice from the mountain. Well, she sat there one day and decided, well, I'm going to call this guy Sandia, at least for the time being. And in that experience of telling this individual she was going to call him Sandia, he responded by saying, oh, watermelon head, that'll work. And she came turned to me and said that. And one of us finally realized that Sandia in Spanish is watermelon. And because the mountain is striped, it has some various different, very different soil stratas. It looks like it's a striped mountain, so it's been called Sandia by the indigenous here for millenniums, as far as we're aware. Is that not correct, Sue?
As far as I know, yeah.
You want to continue on with it?
Well, we nicknamed this voice from the mountain Sandia just because of the location of where the voice was coming from. But we realized, both of us, that we were living in New Mexico, which is known as the land of Roswell and E.T., and both of us had decades of paranormal research experience at that point in time, and we both knew that this voice was not coming from a spirit like a ghost or an ancestor. It was much clearer, it was much more detailed, and the thought structure was different than ours. And it took me a while to realize that the way that this individual spoke, his thinking style, was a little unusual compared to most people that we were familiar with. And that also gave us a little heads up that we might not be dealing with somebody from here. It wasn't for 2 months until I had gone back home to Iowa and then come back to New Mexico to spend Thanksgiving time frame with Otter, that we asked directly the individual that we had been chatting with under the mountain what his real name was and where he called home. And he responded immediately, and he said, my real name is Yookum, and home is the 5th planet orbiting the further of the 2 stars in the constellation you call Reticulum. It's the star system that's a binary system you call Zeta Reticuli. And my background from college, for a year in college, I ran a planetarium and was a planetarium hostess. So I know my night sky, and I knew what he was talking about. And so that whole thing began a dialogue between Otter and I and this individual, nicknamed Sandia, whose real name was Tilcum. And he spelled it for us. He spelled it T-L-K-M, and said our language seldom uses vowels in its written form unless they're borrowed. And so we started, that was September 13, 5.5 years ago, that we started the dialogue with Sandia Ortilcum. And it was 1.5 years after that that he began to introduce us to other members of his staff. It was that same year in 2015 that they requested whether or not it was permitted, actually, for them to share information via what they learned was something called social media here on Earth. And they found out that there was a manner of sharing information with individuals across borders and boundaries and country lines, across religions and everything else, that allowed them to tell their story. And we agreed to help translate for them and do the typing for them because that was permitted. And so they opened up and began sharing on Twitter in June of 2015. 1 year after that, Commander Tilcum introduced us to yet another member of his staff, a woman by the name of Tini, and we've nicknamed her Teeny because she's quite petite. And she, Commander Tilcum, told us was going to be our new telepathy instructor and was going to dictate a telepathy course so that other Earth humans, like ourselves, could learn to develop this skill better. It was 2016 in August, September, we took that first course to a conference in Chewilla, Washington, and shared it and got feedback. And the Telepathy 101 primer, which is a free online available download book, so that the layperson can use it as a basic study guide as to how do you get started in developing your own telepathic skill set. And they wanted to do that. They wanted to share how to do that so that communication between them and us could be facilitated. That free course is available at officialfirstcontact.com, and right now is in at least 11 languages that I remember, and we're working on more as we speak. But when people began to use that instruction manual, that small handbook, the Telepathy 101 primer, and practice what Tini had taught and dictated, people around the world began to get visits and report back to us. And that social media account and then the Telepathy 101 primer, I believe, Kevin, was how you got started with your visits from the Ponte, yes?
Pretty much, yep. After I finished finally reading the full Telepathy 101 primer, I did the protocols at the end, and I sent out the telepathic hello. And then later on that night, I woke up around 3:30 in the morning, and I was just about trying to get back to sleep when all of a sudden I had my eyes closed, and I was just half asleep, when all of a sudden this three-dimensional Zeta face appeared 2 feet from my face when my eyes were closed. And I was seeing him 2 feet from my face with my eyes closed. And I jumped out of bed. I went, whoa! And I actually flipped out of bed backwards because it startled me so much. It was somebody came to say hello because I had said hello. Yes, telepathy can be visual, and I saw him with my eyes closed in front of my face, 2 feet from me. It was crazy. So yeah, you want to have contact? Download the Telepathy 101 primer and practice about 30 minutes a day. For couple, whatever it is, 3-4 weeks. Keep practicing every day. You will have contact.
You got to remember too, this is written for the layperson. It's not written. You don't have to be a rocket scientist in order to develop telepathic skills and communicate with the spiritual world and the UFO world and the paranormal world. It works in all those genres.
Otter, tell everybody what happened after about 100 days after the primer had been published. What happened here at our house?
What happened here? We got deluged with people coming back and saying that they had contact, had evidence of contact, had photographs, had videos of encounters with extraterrestrials that they had somewhere after 100 days of consistent practice. And as you continue to practice over the months and years that come and go, your skills will improve and improve more and become more stronger as time goes on, that you'll be able to deal with talking to several hundred different entities and know by vibration, by sensation, by emotions, who the individual is that's coming in, simultaneously to the other people too at the same time. It takes practice, and more practice. Thank you.
But it is a skill that can be developed.
Most definitely. We all have the hardware and the wiring for it. We just need to learn how to use it. Society has taught us that that's, anything. It's parlor charades, or something else. And I'm here to tell you, after 40 years of experiencing telepathic communication, it's real. It's real as the day is long.
I know what I've found is, because I'm friends with experiencers, I'm also, friends with professional researchers, and
right.
the more and more that I spend, more time as an experiencer, the more and more I start to see this gap with the researchers, because the researchers take telepathy and they give it names like channelers, and they have all these different categories of how they're categorizing and studying and analyzing channelers under a microscope. And I try and tell them, you have to stop spending more time, less time analyzing it and more time developing your own telepathic abilities, because they're only seeing it as special people who have this ability, or it's some kind of genetic defect, or they've got a strange color of hair that makes them able to have contact, or they've had a death experience and that's why they can now hear voices. No, it's not it at all, folks. The fact is that we all have these abilities, and we have all these all these followers on Twitter who are coming back saying, I've been practicing with the primer, and I'm having contact.
That's
so,
right.
Yes, anybody can do this. You don't
the
have
only
to,
person you could ever say would not possibly have the ability to practice telepathy is somebody who does not have the hippocampus, which is in the interior of your brain, two little nodules that stick around the medulla oblongata, and those two nodules are primary sensors of telepathic communication. So
the amygdala.
Amygdala, exactly, and everybody has it. If you got a brain, you got an amygdala in your brain, and that's your key, and that's your headlights to turn on to pick up the telepathic communication. That's what the exercises in the primer are all about. It's for you to become more self-aware of yourself, your emotions, your sensations. Learn how telepathy will work with you best in the manner that you used to learn in school. If you were a hands-on mechanical type of person, then you're going to get sensations from different entities that are going to feel mechanical or so on. But it all depends. If you were a visual and auditory learner, then you're going to hear things and you're going to see things. So This information can come in numerous forms. Right,
It's a matter
Sue?
of your learning style.
Exactly.
Yeah, multiple ways of the telepathy that's communicated, and also the experience of telepathy is much more complex and 4-dimensional compared to verbal communication that we have.
Yes.
For example, the greatest example to give you an understanding of how deep telepathy is, if you folks can tell about when you asked Judy about sky kiting.
Fly kiting?
Fly kiting, yeah. Go ahead,
Rudy, I asked Rudy early on in our friendship what she did when she was off duty and what did she like. And one of the things that she explained was that when she was off duty, she would take girlfriends that were also from telepathic star nations, and they'd go down to the Amazon rainforest and sit in a canopy at sunset. And they would merge telepathically with entire flocks of birds. And she gave the example of entire flocks of parrots that were very colorful. And as they rose for their last flight of the night at sunset before they settled in, the entire flock would join with the gals, and these gals would take turns working with the entire flock in flight, in motion, to form moving, changing, undulating images in the sky, whether it was images of animals or images of faces or interesting geometric shapes. And it was an art sport, she called it, like a competition to see who could merge with the flock and create the most magnificent, moving, changing images. And when she described it, she downloaded at the same time as she was explaining it the feeling of merging with thousands of birds and feeling all of their consciousnesses simultaneously. They weren't taking them over, they were playing together. It was an agreement to play in competition. And the birds in the flock enjoyed it just as much as the gals did. But you also got the feeling of them sitting in the canopy and seeing the sunset and watching the images and feeling the wind and smelling the green. I mean, the entire experience. And then it also came with a little bit of the history and the fact that they do it in the oceans with schools of fish. And this whole art sport genre came at me in one huge, massive download of absolute fun and joy and delight. And when it finally came down to the translation on that went out on Twitter, we had to say, with limited number of characters, what is fly kiting? Fly kiting is merging telepathically with flocks or schools to form moving images in competition. It lost a lot in translation. It was a huge, emotional, joyful experience that when you put it down into a sentence on paper, sure lost something in translation.
It lost about 98% of the meaning. And if you folks understand, that's the difference between human communication and Star Nation communication. The difference of why telepathy is so important, because you are missing all that much more of communication, and that's why it's so important.
You also mentioned schools, Sue, and you didn't bring up the aquatics and the fact that some of the members of the aquatic stations work with schools of fish in the same type of practice.
Right, they sure do. The download that comes with telepathic communication is so much more than just hearing words in your head, like hearing a voice on a radio. It's a huge chunk of information, and sometimes it's so much that it makes your brain exhausted from the massive amount of information processing that it's firing simultaneously. It's like when we get telepathic conversations with the Ponti at night, whether it's in dream state or whether or not we're just awake but really, really tired and sleepy, sometimes the conversation, if it goes on for a half an hour or more, can tire your brain out, and afterwards you feel like you need a nap, like your brain is a little jello-y feeling, and you have to process because you feel like somebody downloaded a whole bunch of information onto the hard drive in your brain, and you're not sure what it all is and how it all works yet. And so we find that frequently after conversations, as we're rethinking about them, we will pick up other pieces of information, almost like remembering bits of a conversation or bits of a dream or slight details that you didn't catch the first time. And that concept of other details after a visit or after a CE5 communication that emerged later because they got stored in your brain kind of the same way your dreams do, in that alpha, theta sort of brain chemistry state that makes it harder to retrieve memories like it does in regular waking beta state consciousness. And so we frequently will, when we hear people say, I got these images, suggest to them that they take a pencil and a blank piece of paper and sketch, because frequently their memories will emerge with details in a sketch or a doodle that they don't have verbal words for, because they didn't get stored with nouns. They just got stored with light and shadow and shape. And so it's a little bit different way of retrieving visit memories, but it does work especially for the very visual folks.
There you go. Oh, and folks, to also mention, in case we hadn't mentioned it, where you download the telepathy primer, you go to www.officialfirstcontact.com. That's officialfirstcontact.com. And there's, as we said, there's about 11 different languages that you can download it in. It's free. Download that and practice, and you will have contact. What I'm also going to mention, folks, before we go to commercial break, is that we're going to open up the floors for questions. If you'd like to ask either Sue or Otter a question, or we have one of the Sandia crew members on the desk. If you'd like to ask them a question, you'll have an opportunity to be able to speak to a real Ponti, a real Zeta. So we're going to open the floors for questions. You email your questions to dj@artistfirst.com. That's dj@artistfirst.com. So when we come back from a commercial break, we'll be able to then take any of your questions and talk a little bit more about telepathy. So email us at dj@artistfirst.com. And folks, we're just going to be back after a quick commercial break here. And tune in and keep listening to Pyramids of Mars.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, on artistfirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
Artist First, bringing you the best shows on the planet and off-planet. Our newest show, Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio, features musician alien contactee Kevin Estrella. His latest release, Echo Cosmic, has critics hailing it the finest instrumental album since Joe Satriani's Surfing with the Alien. Check out all of Kevin's awe-inspiring guitar playing at pyramidsonmars.com. There you will find all kinds of interplanetary goodies. Music, merch, and videos to stimulate your senses and broaden your mind. Check out the amazing Alien Species t-shirt collection. So photorealistic, people will be stopping in the streets to look at you. As well, Kevin has released his very own series of instructional guitar video lessons, teaching his unique approach to neoclassical and classically influenced lead guitar playing. All this and more at pyramidsonmars.com. Pyramids on Mars. Music truly out of this world.
You are listening to Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio on the Artist First Radio Network. Let's get back to your host, Mr. Kevin Estrella.
Welcome back. We are with Sue and White Otter from New Mexico, talking about our good friends, Sandia Wisdom, Sandia ETs, underneath the Sandia Mountains, who I have had multiple contacts with. I am visited by them on a weekly basis. In fact, I had a visitation last night. I don't know if they came to visit me. I know they came and visited my little parrot, Frisco, because a bunch of things were moved around in my bathroom. And it wasn't him who moved them because they weigh about 5 pounds. So I know somebody was in there paying him a visit. It was really cool. But I have visitations all the time by the gang. I know when they've come here because I was told, well, if you got sand in your bed, there's the signal right there. And I got so much sand in my bed I could build a sandcastle. It's not funny, but long and short from there. But we're going to open the floor up for questions. As I said, if you have any questions to ask Sue or Otter, or we have who do we have on the desk? Who's there? We see there's a new person. You see? Did you see it?
Zufu.
Zufu. Okay, we have Zufu on the desk. So, Scott, do we have any questions coming through?
We have one that's arrived. We just announced it, give the folks a chance to send them in. But actually, this first one has come in for you, Kevin, and it says, Kevin, when the ETs visit you, why don't they make themselves known?
They do.
Well, they do, but it's done in a way. They will move things around. They'll leave little tidbits that they've been. Most of my memories with the Sandia gang are suppressed. They're not blocked or erased. It's that they are suppressed and put into a deeper level. I have had some recall from some of my meetings with the gang. I have had a couple experiences where I was fully conscious when they came and visited, and that was when Peter came and visited, and that was a very, very, very amazing experience. He picked me up off the couch and held me in my arms, or held me in his arms, and then he put me down, and we talked for a bit, and then next thing I know, I had this missing time, and I was back on my couch. But I have had other contacts where I have been consciously awake. These visitations kind of take place in a very lucid dream, but they are not dreams. You know the difference between a dream and a lucid state where you're actually you're having a one-on-one interaction or meeting. And I've had a couple with the Ponte. I've had a couple with a couple of different star nations. So yes, I have been awake and they have been here. Other times they'll leave me little Easter eggs, like they'll move my crystals, or they'll return something that's been missing, or they will leave a handprint. I got several 4-fingered handprints around here, or they move things around. It's funny, but the dirt in my bed all the time, and all the time. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. If anyone can do this communicating with the ETs, then why aren't more people doing it? From Trent 346.
You guys want to take this?
Go ahead, Sue.
Well, why aren't more people doing it? I think people are still half believing that telepathy is a lark or a LARP, or depending on who you talk to. When people first start practicing their telepathy, the most common issues that we hear from new students is because you're so used to hearing one voice in your head, and that's what we call your own head thought voice, that frequently first contact comes across as sounding like yourself, but it's like somebody else's words, somebody else's emotions, somebody else's memories, somebody else's images, okay? New information, or a manner of speaking that isn't yours. As you practice, that head thought voice or sound of someone else's voice alters and develops its own signature, I'll put it that way, so that you begin to recognize the difference between you and, oh, that's somebody else. Okay. More people are honestly practicing now. The primer has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of downloads now across the planet in multiple languages, and we are getting reports back from people who have established successful contact, whether it's the simple show me where your ship is in the sky by blinking your lights, please, so that I see, or whether that's people catching a glimpse in their peripheral vision of somebody moving down the hallway of their home or across the room, or whether that's telepathic contact more than once, repeated contact through various family members or pets even. But the contact that is repeating with people who are practicing their telepathy, we're getting reports back from all continents now, except maybe Antarctica. I don't think we're getting reports back there yet. But we're getting reports back from a number, from all the other continents, that people are having success and are beginning to interact and learn more through conversation and dialogue about the Ponte themselves. And we're getting details of those reports coming back to us. Some of those folks get a chance to capture the details of their visits with visual evidence, whether that's landing sites in their backyards where they see indentations in the grass or swirled grass as if it's been laid down like a crop circle, or whether that's videos of craft over your home, or evidence of things being taken, moved, or mysteriously showing up in your home. We have reports of people touching or being touched by and being able to describe the physical feeling of everything from their clothing to their skin, and then the emotional reports, the emotional feeling that these contactees are coming back with. Most of them are astonished and overwhelmed at the profoundness of the emotions coming off of the Star Nation to them during their interaction. It's the piece they didn't expect. Whether that's the love, the humor, the joy, the curiosity, the intrigue, or just the general friendship, graciousness of the Pontees. All of the above we're getting back from contactees in Australia and Asia and Europe and here in North America. It's the stories that are coming in that are going to go into the next book of contact stories are just wonderful. Wonderful. Men and women of all ages, children. We're getting reports of a number of kids between the ages of 10 and 15 whose parents are contactees, who then become contactees themselves, much to their delight because they're having a very good time. So the common questions that we started getting 100 days and more after the Telepathy 101 primer was published online, that's when we got the deluge, as Otter put it. We got overwhelmed with lots and lots of repeat questions, and so we had to go back to Tani and Commander Tilcomb and say, listen, we've got all of these other new issues coming up. How do you want to deal with this? And together with them, with the contactees, Otter and I wrote a second piece. The first piece was really Tini's translation, but the second writing that we did turned into the book that's now available on Amazon called Inviting E.T. And what it is it's an extension of all the common questions and what happens during a CE5, how do you host your own CE5, what other protocols and what can you do to get ready, what can you expect, how do you handle missing time if it happens, how do you handle the overwhelm, what's it like, or what were the first contact stories of some of these other people who did what you would like to try and do. So if you are really interested in having a visit and you've practiced your telepathy for 100 days or more, then your next step is grab the Inviting ET book and read it. It's not a very big book, and you can probably go through it in a couple of hours. But it's full of first-hand real information stories, as well as things that you can do at your own CE5 event, should you want to do it with your friends or family, and sit down and spend an evening focusing on inviting one of the Star Nations to come see you. And because our interaction with the Pontee has been so positive, our suggestion would be start with them. If you have had interactions with another Star Nation that have been positive, then by all means start with them, invite them back. But if you invite them and just share with them your everyday world, treat them like people, you never know what you're going to get back in conversation. You have no idea. You have anything to lose and everything to gain but trying.
Yeah, they're just people. That's all they are. People got to stop calling them aliens because that's very rude. But they're just people, and people need to get over fear. A lot of the programming on this planet happens to do with a lot of fear programming that keeps people within a lower vibration and keeps them from being able to reach out. They've been programmed into fear. Get rid of the fear, because then you'll have visitations. I myself, have had visitations by not just the Ponte, but I've had visitations by other star nations as well. In fact, I had an amazing visitation 4 weeks ago, where I had a visit from a Sasquatch, and they came.
You did?
Understand. Yes,
All
I did.
right. All right.
Tell me.
Well, I was. They come interdimensionally. You have to understand that they come. They can either be interdimensional or they can come in a physical. This was interdimensional, and I woke up. It was 4:30 in the morning, and I'm just trying to get back. I'm just in the process of getting back to sleep. I'm halfway asleep, and all of a sudden, my brainstem, all of a sudden, is activated. Because you have to understand that the Ponte, they've done some work on me, and they've cleared me and worked with my telepathy, and they've done things to my mind and my brain. My brainstem activated, and it was like, you have a visitor. That's basically the message came. And
hair on the back of your neck stood up.
Well, it was what it was like all of a sudden, like I was lying in bed, and I felt this large body pressed against my left-hand side of my body, and I felt this arm around my back, and I felt this huge hand just underneath my under my armpit. Then all of a sudden, I heard this telepathic. I'll never forget it, because I did not hear with my ears. I heard it inside my skull. It was and then I gave my visitor a hug back, and then I just slowly woke up, and then I'm conscious again, because I was in a very, very vivid lucid dream, but I was not asleep. And then I still felt the hand under my armpit, but I heard that telepathic in my head. I realized I got a hug from a Sasquatch. Now, it's not my only time I've had contact with a Sasquatch. I've had contact with a Sasquatch when I visited Sue and Otter in Albuquerque. You know, they go into their. I would sleep in their camper, and every time I go into the camper, they would rock my camper back and forth. They rock me to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my God, they're amazing. They're amazing.
They've done that to us before. When there are some Sasquatch, I will warn you, that are especially the conical, long sloped forehead Sasquatch that are very, very tall and very, very large. Those folks telepathically come across as stronger by quite a bit than the other Sasquatch, and when they show up, it will nearly bowl you over sideways telepathically. You will feel like, holy buckets, there's somebody huge here, and
giant
you will
wall.
feel it. You will feel it in your body, and you will feel that presence in the room in a way that takes your breath away. I mean, it's like a feeling of potency that is immense, and you feel very, very small. But they are gentle and amazing people, and very ancient and very knowledgeable, very spiritual, but they want to understand your intent the minute you step into their territory where they reside. But if they have gotten interested in you in whatever fashion, however they learned of you, and they come visit you at your home, boy, you know it. There's no question. When they arrive, there is a presence, and it's big.
There you go.
Yep.
I think we have a question. We have time for a few more questions. Scott, do you have any more questions there?
There is one more, and it reads, question for all three. Do you feel, quote unquote, that we are on the brink of something big is about to happen soon? Can you feel that? If so, is it a great thing or something not so great? From Hilda Steele.
Okay. We have been sensing a buildup and anticipation and a busyness. And there have been days in the last couple of weeks where the Sandia crew has been very quiet with us because it feels like they're building up to an arrival and an event. We're not talking about the official first contact event in 2021, but it feels as if around the 21st of this month-ish, give or take a couple of days, that we've got a couple of star nations coming into our solar system. That's one. But the other piece that we've heard almost murmurings, like you hear somebody's side thought from a number of crew members, is they're keeping track of something going on with our Earth-human space programs, and they're expecting an event coming out of the Earth nation space programs as an announcement, almost like there's a planned announcement coming. They're not saying much more than that. And honestly, Teal'c came back yesterday and immediately went to sleep because he'd been up for a couple of weeks at meetings and coming and going and coming and going. And so we haven't had a chance to speak with him since he got back about anything until he gets up and is willing to talk to us. So we're waiting on hearing more about this arrival and also perhaps Earth-human event announcement at the end of this month. And the minute we know more, we'll share more. Or the minute they ask us to share something, of course, we'll immediately get on Facebook and Twitter and put it out there for them.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Yep.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah. But we're coming close to the end of the show, and we just want to let you folks know that we will have links on the archive page for the official first contact, that where you can find that. We were also going to have links to the Finding ET or Inviting ET book. We'll have links for that too. Very important book if you want to host your own CE5 or if you want to have your own CE5 contact and how to do it. But the combination of the telepathy primer and the Inviting ET book, anyone who wants to have contact with star nations, you can. You have the ability.
It works.
There's nothing holding you back.
It's proving itself to work on every continent, and it's working in a way that seems to be very gentle to people. We are not hearing stories back from contactees that they were upset or frightened, startled sometimes, but for the most part, I would have to say 98 to 99% of the reports that we're getting back are extremely positive, and these contactees are delighted. And they're furthering communication because they're learning, and they're having their own discourses, and they're getting detailed information. And we encourage that because the Pontees are saying, we've got official first contact coming up in 2021, and they would like as many of us to be used to their style of communication as possible, so that there's a lessening of fear and a greater chance of OFC, or official first contact, being a success. If people want to interact with the Pontees themselves, they can hop onto Twitter at Sandia Wisdom, or you can look up Sandia the ET. There's also a Sandia Mountain Information Station Pontee fan page on Facebook, and frequently, as soon as we know something new, or we put it out on one of those two, and then also we can take questions and ask the gang and get back to you if you've got questions for them.
Yes, we'll have links for that too. The new official Facebook page, Sandia Mountain Gang. Is that what it's called? The Ponte Sandia Mountain Gang.
Something like
To be honest,
Something
I'll
like
have
that.
to look it up to tell you exactly.
Yeah. But folks, there we go. We've come to the top of our hour, and it's been a fast hour. But I'm so glad to have Sue and Otter back, and they'll definitely be back on the show because we have some developments always happening, and some of the amazing things that we're working on, and always new information from the gang. But Sue and Otter, thanks once again for coming back on the show, and we got some really good information across to everybody.
Oh, thank
You're
you for
welcome.
having us, and it goes too fast, but sure appreciate it, and wish everybody success. If they would like, send your stories of your contact back to us, and we'd love to hear.
There you go. Well, folks, that's another episode of Pyramids of Mars UFO Radio, and we shall see you next month, and until that time, you keep your eyes to the skies.